Do you like receiving a glimpse of the kingdom for free? Would you like to support what God is doing through these resources? Then please consider donating to David Pendergrass Ministries, Inc. today at davidpendergrass.com. There, you can also sign up to receive Dr. Pendergrass's free blog on a wide range of theological, biblical, and relationship issues. That's davidpendergrass.com.
Hello. Thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I'm going to pick up right where we left off last week. We're in part 2. I'm responding to this one Methodist reverend's little essay he wrote that has got a lot of traction on Facebook and different places. So we're going to pick back up where I left off. Let me go back and quote him because I'm almost done. Quote, "Why oppose slavery and segregation? Because they are hurtful." Let me pause there. No, that's not why we do it. Segregation is predicated upon racism. Inherently distrusting or disvaluing another human being based on the color of skin is not a loving thing to do. It is unkind. It is mean. It is not Christian. That's why. It's not because it hurts them. There are moral prohibitions in the New Testament not to be those things. You're supposed to be loving and kind. And segregating someone based on race color is not. It's not because it's hurtful. It's because we have moral prohibitions don't do it. Why oppose slavery? Oh, that's a long, fat issue I've talked about before. It's not because it's just hurtful. It's always been wrong. Kidnapping human beings in the slave trade was condemned in the Old Testament and the New Testament. When we hear the word slave in the Bible, it doesn't mean kidnapping people and robbing. That was a capital punishment in the Old Testament. And slavery kidnappers are told they're going to hell in the New Testament. So it's not just because they're hurtful. It's because only God has the prerogative to own all human beings in that sense. The one difference would be, and there's rare instances in the Old Testament, when someone forced attack and you didn't have prisons. They either died or became a slave. That's right. That happens sometimes. But it's not because it's hurtful now. It's because in the New Testament, you don't capture enemy. You don't fight. At no point ever did Jesus go fight someone and say, you can do what you want. That, again, you go to Jesus. You go to Jesus, not because it's hurtful. Okay, I go back to him. Quote, "Why do the 10 Commandments forbid murder, stealing, lying, and adultery and coveting? Because they are hurtful. On the other hand, what is hurtful about playing cards, dancing, or having a glass of wine with the meal?" End quote. My response is, you have no idea, apparently, why the 10 Commandments were given. It's not because they're hurtful. You need to go read people like John Walton on this issue. I'm not going to have the time to go over that. Okay, well, anyway, you can go back to that. But there's so many good biblical Old Testament scholar explanations for the 10 Commandments. And I don't remember any of them ever saying, it's hurtful, that's why. And the reason why playing cards and dancing, having a glass of wine with meal is not hurtful today. That's right. For most people, it's not. But guess for whom it is hurtful? Guess. People who think they're sins. And apparently he doesn't care what the New Testament ever says. That's fine, but I do. Paul says repeatedly to the Corinthians and to the Romans, you do not do things that cause other people to sin. Matter of fact, you don't like Paul? Forget Paul. Jesus said that. Jesus said if he calls me the little ones to stumble, to scandalize, to sin, it's better put a millstone around his neck and throw himself in the sea. But in a practical pastoral application of that is when Paul mentions it to the Corinthians and the Romans, when there were Jewish Christians eating with Gentile Christians, and the Gentile Christians were eating meat that the Jewish Christians knew came of or the Gentile Christians, it didn't matter, they both knew, it came from the temple down the road where the idols were worshipped. It was a big deal. And Paul said, don't do it. Don't eat drink. I don't drink wine. I don't do anything that what? Causes my brother to stumble. If you meet a modern person today who associates dancing or playing cards or drinking a glass of wine, if they associate that with go sinning, or they're addicts, maybe they're alcoholic, and the drinking wine is to make them go over the edge, if you do those things in front of them and you know it's going to lead them to sin, you have just sinned terribly bad. Terribly bad. The naivete to think that playing cards, dancing, it doesn't hurt anybody is, I hope he grows up and wakes up. There are people in the world who think it is horrible, depending where you are, what society you live in, and so forth. But we Christians should be very careful about the things we do if it causes someone to sin. Now, does that mean for the rest of our entire lives we could never ever play cards? No, it doesn't mean that. If I'm around baby Christians and they think playing cards is associated with nothing but sinners do and I'm sinning, well, I won't do it around them, but eventually I'm going to help them grow up mature in the faith and realize cards in themselves are not inherently sinful. They can't be. So I'll hope them grow up, but I will care very, very much about whether or not it causes them to sin. In that sense, I would say it, quote, hurts them. Now, the last two little paragraphs were finally to the point of this whole long essay. And I'll quote, "If a person is born with the same gender orientation, why must they be prohibited from having an intimate relationship with another person, forced into isolation and loneliness just because many people unfairly oppose that? The fact that some Christians do not approve does not make such a relationship hurtful." Let me pause. First off, it's just, come on, forced into isolation and loneliness. Have you ever met a celibate person? Do you think every single celibate person in the world is desperately lonely and depressed and isolated? That's just stupid. That's just stupid. I've met many, it's just stupid. Have you never met a single person who actually doesn't sleep around with people? I have. I've known single people who don't go around randomly have sex with people. You think I need someone to complete me. I've met many fully content, happy, fulfilled Christians who are not desperately lonely and isolated because they can't have random sex with people or don't have a relationship in a marriage relationship. They're just heterosexual single people. And it's just stupid. The second thing I'd say is I'd answer your question. Why must they be prohibited for an intimate relationship with another person if they're same sex, same gender orientation? The answer to your question is because Jesus said so. That's it. There's your answer. The answer is Jesus said so. I have read this many times on my podcast and on it goes, and blogs and on. But just in case you haven't listened to them, read them all through the Gospels. The longest treatment is in Matthew chapter 19. And in context where Jesus is asked about divorce, is it lawful to divorce him for any reason or any cause? In 19 verse 4, Matthew 19:4, he says, "Have you not read from the beginning? The Creator made them male and female. And he said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and will be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh." We pause there. Throughout all Jewish history, that was an allusion to marriage. All the time. Okay, in verse 6, "So they're no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." I'm going to go down a little bit later on. Now, that was so disturbing for his disciples to hear that because everyone knew you could divorce when everyone got divorced. It was so disturbing the disciples freak out. And they say in verse 10, the disciples said to him, "If this is the case of a husband with a wife, it's better not to marry." Listen to that. Jesus' very own disciples said, "Screw this, Jesus. If I can have the right to divorce a woman when I want to divorce her, I'm not even going to marry. It's not even worth it." Boy, their heart's really in the right place, isn't it? Listen to verse 11. Here's your answer to the question, Reverend. Verse 11. He said to them, "Not everyone can accept this statement, except to those to whom it has been given." That is, disciples of Jesus. "For there are some eunuchs," that means celibates, "who were that way from birth." That is, they can't have babies because they can't have babies. "And some who were made eunuchs by others." Some were castrated. That's true. "And third, and some who became eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven." The one who is able to accept this should accept it. That is to say, if you want to be his disciple, Jesus saying, "Be my disciple." That's how it works in sexual relationships. You either keep your pants zipped up or you get married to the opposite gender. Those are your two options. So to answer your question, Reverend McCormick, is because Jesus said so. Period. Now, what's going to happen afterwards is, this is what every single person says in response to what I just said. They all say, "David, what you just said causes suicide. It causes harm." And I've addressed it other times, and my response is, no, it doesn't cause it. Jesus is not the cause for suicide. Mental disorders and horrible narcissism entitlement is what causes suicides. In those instances, not Jesus' commandment to be celibate or married. I've known plenty of single people, not married, not having sex, single, who are not remotely close to going and killing themselves or self-mutilation. Not even close. The idea that this commandment by Jesus forces people to go kill themselves is absurd nonsense. Okay, we're almost done. Quote, almost everyone affirms close, caring relationships between men and between women. We become concerned only when the sexual component is added. Why? All close relationships are much more than sexual. Even heterosexual marriage is about friendship, mutuality, and caring. We should wrestle with the reality that close, same-sex friendships are applauded. It is only when the sexual component is added that we become concerned. Again, why? Why not have the same moral standards for same-gender relationships as for heterosexual relationships? No promiscuity, no coercion, no insensitivity. Instead, seek commitment, faithfulness, mutual sensitivity, caring, and support. Who does that hurt? Instead, it treats all people as persons of equal worth, as children of God, and encouraged to enjoy mutually affirming, intimate, helpful relationships with others. Quote, to love your neighbor is to do the helpful thing and to avoid doing the hurtful thing, even when cultural conditioning makes that uncomfortable. Helping, not hurting, looks and sounds like Jesus to me. End quote. Okay, my last little bit here. I'll start where he ended, which is helping, not hurting, looks and sounds like Jesus to me. Good for you, brother. We absolutely disagree because I've read Jesus before. If you mean hurting someone physically, of course that's not Jesus. Of course it's not. It's not Christians. Jesus never goes and hurts gay people or anybody. He didn't go take a sword and start punching people in the face. He never does that. Christians should never do that. Christians should never, ever, 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 ever physically harm people. Ever. That's unchristian, unkind, unloving, and stupid. They should never do that. But here he means something different. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, it seems to me he means hurting means he's implying there's some kind of emotional or psychological damage or hurting that's being done. If that's the case, then Jesus was a very, very hurtful person. Jesus had the crazy audacity to assume everyone was a sinner and that they needed to repent and that they were wrong and that greedy people, certain religious leaders, people who took advantage of the poor and the widows and the homeless, he thought these people were bad and doing wrong things, and he hurt them. He offended people's sensibilities all the time. I've done a podcast on this. I have a blog on this. He offended people left and right. He offended them. He offended them. He hurt their feelings. And today that just doesn't preach well. It wouldn't preach in this guy's church at all, apparently, because apparently Jesus is just a loving hippie who puts his arm around everybody and says, it's okay what you do. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you don't hurt anybody, which is not like Jesus, is not Christian, and it's dumb. Well, I'll end on that last penultimate paragraph. When he says, we become only concerned when sexual component is added. Why? Why? Why is it just about sexuality? The response is so simple. Because that's the moral prohibition in the Bible. That's the moral in the Old Testament. I think it's some in the New Testament as well, but certainly the Old Testament, for example, they knew you could be really, really close to your animals. You could be friends with dogs and cats and cows. Guess what you can't do? You can't screw them. You can't. You can't put your penis in a cow's vagina. You can't put your penis in a goat's vagina. Those things are prohibited. David, wait a second now. Come on. You can have close, mutually caring friendships with animals. You know, it's almost like they have feelings like humans do. You just get bent out of shape when you put a penis in a vagina. The answer to that is, I sure do. I sure do. Every single Jew throughout the history of Judaism be against him, and so do Christians. David, you know, sisters and brothers, they can get really, really close. They have close. I know many siblings, David, many siblings who they treat each other with equal worth, equal children of God. They're mutually affirming and intimate and helpful relations with each other. And you just get out of shape when the brother puts his penis in his sister's vagina. Why is that? Why is that, David? Do you see how stupid and horrific this is? David, I've known many older people who have been close friends with people who are, they're younger, they're minors, but they're close with them. There's no coercion or insensitivity. There's no promiscuity. There's mutual sensitivity and caring and support with that 15-year-old and that 20 or that 30-year-old. They're close. They're mutual. What's wrong just because you put a penis in a vagina? This is horrific. The answer to the question is because it's a sin. It's a horrible sin. That's why. It goes against exactly what Jesus commanded. Jesus said, the implication is that sexuality is to be experienced only within a male and female marriage. Otherwise, you keep your penis to yourself and your vagina to yourself, and you're single, and you are celibate, or what he said, a eunuch. And it's for the kingdom of heaven, meaning if you're a disciple of Jesus. This does not apply to pagans. It doesn't apply to devil worshippers. It doesn't apply to Muslims and Buddhists or whatever. I don't care, because they're not Christians. It's what God designed. My point is, it's not morally binding on them right now because they don't know the truth. But if you're a follower of Jesus and you know the truth, it's morally binding, period. What I mean is, you should know better. Does God want every person to live this way? Absolutely, yes, he does, because Christianity is true. Yes, he does. But we don't expect the same from them as we do from Christians. So to answer your question, why is it different? Because it's disgusting. Secondly, all these examples I gave show that it leads to a disgusting conclusion for all relationships with all other creatures that fit these criteria. 2, Jesus condemned it. That's why. Jesus, the second member of the Trinity, the Lord Messiah, said it. Where's the ambiguity? The third thing I'd say is, the Bible never defines sexual relationships by these qualifications. It never says it's okay to get married as long as there's no promiscuity, no coercion, no insensitivity, blah, blah, blah. These are modern Western conventions that he's just making up that sound romantic and go, look, you love each other. They're kind. They're sweet. Listen, David, let him put his penis in that guy's butt. That's what it is. Let that guy do things to his penis. They do everything else that friends do. You know how completely false that is? I have several very, very close guy friends. You know how much I don't do those things? You know how much I don't do those things? I can't describe how much I don't do those things. I mean, guys can hug. There's a whole level of physical intimacy that straight guys would never, ever do with another straight guy, ever. Because those are things you save in romantic intimate relationships with a wife, period. So this idea that it's a long, fluid line, and it's just one little baby step over to penis inside of an anus, just one little baby step, is nonsense. It's just nonsense. I can't know the better way to say it because this is horrible. This is embarrassing that pastor will say this kind of stuff. It's embarrassing. I don't know a better way to say it. I can't believe it. I can, but I can't believe it. And this is what makes us round on Facebook. This is the kind of stuff that goes around everywhere. I go, oh, that's so good. Oh, that's good stuff. I'm so glad I read that. Oh, my goodness. And it fuels this horrible way to read the Bible, that it's a picky, choosy thing that only fits our modern cultural conventions. Because today the worst sin is to hurt somebody else. As long as you don't hurt them, that could change tomorrow. It could change next year, in 10 years, and 20 years. Guess what? There'll be a brand new thing you just shove on the text. And then in 50 years, they just shove it on the text. In 100 years, another moral vow, it just shoves it on the text. They just shove it on the text. Whatever the change, the whims of the seasons of the society. The only way to stop that completely is don't do that. Go back to what the text actually said in its historical context and say, did Jesus say it or did he not? Did the early church say it or not? And if they didn't say it, are there any things we can extrapolate from what was actually taught? Jesus, and then they being the early church as well, secondarily, they have to be the primary source of authority for what is a moral value and what is a moral duty. Period. That's the only way to keep us rooted and locked into what the living Jesus wants from us. If and until the church around the world has a new message from Jesus to start something or to stop something, until that happens, and it can. If and until that happens, I'm sticking with Jesus. I think he's okay. I think he's authoritative enough. Really, I do. I don't think I need to make up some clever, don't hurt him. Reminds me of MC Hammer. MC Hammer said, Hammer, don't hurt him. Hammer, don't hurt him. That's all that matters. Hammer, don't hurt him. Come on now. Long as you don't hurt him, that's it. Can't touch this. You're going to look that up right now on Google when I finish this podcast. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King, and I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcasts, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.